its life. My baby wanna be a queen. Well, alright, we all deserve to find the things in this life.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to 99.1 FM on CJAM. Welcome to this week's episode of PBSC's Magna Carta.
Magna Carta is a show run by the Pro Bono Students of Canada, and we're speaking specifically on behalf of the Windsor chapter at the University of Windsor's Faculty of Law.
PBSC is on a mission to provide free legal support to people and communities facing barriers to justice. With 22 chapters throughout Canada, we are the largest pro bono organization in the country. Our goal with this program is to provide accessible information about relevant legal issues affecting our community.
I'm your co-host, Vurjeet.
And I'm your co-host, Nick.
Okay, Nick, before we get into today's topic, let's just talk about break a bit. It's been a while. How are you?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, 2025. How was your break? How was exam season?
You know what? Break was great, but it felt like not so much of a break.
Yeah?
It was a lot of visiting family, which was awesome, and spending time with people that matter to me.
That's good. That's good. Honestly, for me, I rested a lot. And then I thought that rest would kind of like carry me through a little bit longer. But even like week 2 into semester 2, I was like, where did
You know what?
Where did it all go?
Let's go back to week 2 of the break. I felt so lazy. I'm like, why am I not reading right now?
Yeah.
Why am I not writing something right now? What's going on?
Yeah.
So coming back was great. We had our WILPS week, which is our workplace simulation. That was awesome.
It honestly was really cool. It was a really good experience.
It was nice to get some like our feet in the water.
Exactly,
Yeah.
instead of just learning about theory. And on the note of break, something really funny happened actually that I wanted to tell you about.
Yeah.
This was like week 2. Okay, it's been a while. Exams are over. Tell me why I, in my sleep, am talking about, I don't know if you learned the Bedford case in Crim. I'm talking about like the Bedford case in my sleep. My sister tells me the next morning, she's like, Vurjeet, like, you were talking about something law-related, like, in your sleep at, like, 3 a.m. last night.
That's pretty traumatic, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I know. I've been telling this funny anecdote to everybody. Okay, anyways, let's get into today's topic. I'm very excited about today's discussion. We're diving into a really hot topic, actually, the role of AI, artificial intelligence, specifically related to the legal field. So this topic, it's sparking a lot of debate, honestly. And today we're going to kind of split up our conversation in two parts. The first is specifically, how does AI affect legal research? So when we're conducting our work, how does it affect that? And then we're also going to talk about the other side. How does it affect the business that we get? How are cases changing and the way lawyers work with their clients, maybe in the cases that clients are coming up with?
You were totally right about this sparking a lot of debate. AI is probably going to start playing a huge role in law. Everything from automating legal research to predicting, they can even predict case outcomes. But there's a key question we need to dig into. Can AI be trusted in the legal profession?
And you know, that's a tough one. I mean, at first glance, AI seems like it could really revolutionize how we approach the law, right?
I agree. AI can process massive amounts of data faster than humans. But the big issue is that law isn't just about crunching numbers or reviewing past cases, and we know that. It's about nuance, interpretation, and the ability to adapt to new societal contexts.
Exactly. And see, that's one of the key limitations with AI in law. AI tools rely heavily on data, specifically historical data. So think like past cases, the common law. It pulls from these vast amounts of information across the web, but this data often comes with built-in biases also.
Right. And that's a big concern because AI doesn't just pull data from curated, unbiased sources. It gathers information from the entire internet. That includes books, news, legal databases, and even social media, which we know we can't always trust. And as we know, the internet is full of bias, whether it's gender bias, racial bias, or biases related to socioeconomic status. So if AI is learning from this data, it's going to inherit some of those biases.
I honestly think that's a great point because we're also trying to progress from these biases. How are we going to do that if our data is fully steeped in those biases? So, you know, it's also a huge problem when we start thinking about judgment calls also. AI isn't just predicting case outcomes. It's basically reflecting those past decisions, many of which were, you know, influenced again by these really, you know, biased decisions from the past.
Exactly. And this is where it gets tricky in the legal context. AI might look at a body of case law and decide that, based on previous rulings, a certain outcome is correct. But that's not the role that we're supposed to be taking. Law is constantly evolving, and part of the judge's job and even the lawyer's job is, well, it's especially the lawyer's job, to interpret the law based on facts of the case at hand and balance that with like the current societal context and sometimes even new developments in public policy or technology.
Totally, because the law is fluid. And, this is reminding me of something that we talked about in our first episode, and something that I'm sure has come up in your classes too, Nick, is the living tree doctrine. So the whole idea is that the law will change the same way a tree grows. And AI, one could say that it's kind of only like focusing on maybe a stuck tree, a tree that is not growing.
I would agree with you. It's like a narrow glance at what the law can be.
Yeah, exactly. And the issue is, no matter how advanced AI is, it can't really adjust and innovate new ideas and progress new ideas unless those ideas have already existed out of the data that it's extracting from, right? So that's a really, really important point to think about.
I agree with you. It can miss the nuance and need for reinterpretation that's crucial to the legal profession, and that's why AI can't replace the judgment of humans in the courtroom. It's not just about applying law to the facts. It's about understanding the broader context and interpreting it in a way that aligns with evolving societal values. Judges have the discretion to adapt the law as needed, and that's something AI simply cannot do.
So while AI, it can be this fantastic, wonderful tool for research and helping us with legal strategy, it's really important to kind of hone in on this idea that it should not be used for making the kind of judgment calls and decisions that shape our legal precedent. That precedent affects people's lives. That precedent is based on our ever-changing, progressing Canadian values. So, that's just one thing that is important to remember, at least at our current stage. But with that in mind, I think right now we are in the safe zone still for anybody who is worried about an AI takeover. Much like myself, low-key, my sister, she's always calling me out. She's always like, Vurjeet, you're too scared of ChatGPT. Like, it's our friend. That's like being scared of Google. Imagine that somebody'd be scared of Google.
You know what's crazy? I'm afraid of the AI takeover too. But you know what I do at the end of like almost every time I use ChatGPT? I finish it off with like, thank you.
Love you. Thank you so much. Please don't kill me.
Just so they know that I was there for them.
Right.
I cared.
Yeah. Because
it feels so real. The things that they shoot back at you, and we'll talk about this later, it can be really deceptive.
It can. So, I guess.
Yeah. Well, while AI can like spot trends and offer suggestions based on the data it's collected, when it comes to things like sentencing or interpreting the intent of a law or determining the fairness of something, that requires human judgment and a deep understanding for the context of in Canada. Not just numbers or patterns or fake cases, real cases, anything. The law is not static, and we really have to hit that home today. It's meant to evolve, and AI is inherently ill-suited to handle that fluidity.
Exactly. It's fully steeped in the past cases always. And along with that, let's not forget about the ethical risks that come along with this too, right? If AI tools are used to make legal decisions, then those biases that were in those decisions then become baked into our new decisions too. So it's kind of a recipe for like constant perpetuation of the systemic inequalities that, especially in 2025, we're really trying to overcome. We're trying to progress past like racial biases, gender biases, right? If we're going to rely even more heavily on AI and now in the legal field, then what we're doing is also hindering the possibility of like progressing from those biases.
Absolutely, and reliance is a very dangerous thing, in my opinion, and reliance on AI for legal research and work has gotten a few lawyers in the past couple of years into a lot of trouble at the court level. It is insane, Vurjeet.
Lots of sticky situations.
So many. And I don't know about you, but in my legal research and writing course, love my professor to death.
Yeah.
But I think every time we have some sort of assignment or project, it's constantly hammered in.
Yeah.
Don't use AI. And After we dive into this little case, I think Professor Little Kwan might have a big point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's interesting because they also are professors now, which this is new in law school. They're addressing AI. Like, our class was the first class that had that AI assignment. Did you have that too?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so it's kind of this idea of like whether lawyers like it or not, whether profs like it or not, they have to now teach their students on at least the like clarity on where there's an issue with AI in terms of like creating legal memos, for example. Like our prof was explaining something about how there can be false information, which we'll go into a little bit later with this case. But it is a reality, right? That this stuff is not accurate. So we cannot be relying on it.
Even trusting its like sentence structure. You can tell when something
Absolutely
is AI generated, and it's not good because sometimes people, like we said, get really, really busy and can have really dire consequences. So let's jump into that case.
Okay, so a little bit of basic foundation laying about the case. So this was related to a federal judge in New York. And the judge imposed penalties on a legal counsel after it was discovered that the brief that the lawyers had created contains citation from non-existent cases.
With real judges' names.
Real judges' names. Let me repeat. These cases were basically made up out of thin air, guys. They were not real. They sounded real. Whatever AI made them, like, it was sounding real convincing, but it was fully 100% not real. And what made it a little bit funnier / worse is that the attorney, after being called out on this, continued to stand by the documents. They're like, yeah, no, actually, it is real. You just can't find it anywhere.
I think my soul would leave my body. I think I would die in that court. I don't think I'd make it out of there.
I'm
And imagine me like doubling down on that when the judge, who's like, for a lack of a better word, like the master of the law,
Yeah.
who knows the law, especially in this specific area that you're looking at,
Yeah.
and you're trying to tell them you're wrong.
Yeah.
The absolute nerve of that is crazy.
Absolutely.
Talk about going down on a sinking ship. So these false citations were all created by ChatGPT, and because of such a serious ethical breach, the judge's ruling was really firm, with the imposition of $5,000 for each attorney, as well as their firm. And they were also mandated to notify every judge who was falsely cited in their submissions. That is a huge blow. Not only have you caused an ethical breach in the courtroom that you're in, but you've also lied about a bunch of other very real people who are well respected, just to get your case to where you wanted it to go.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. And what stands out to me is that the judge did not condemn artificial intelligence itself. In fact, the judge acknowledged that technological advancements are becoming increasingly common in legal practice. And like we've pointed out, the issue with its use in this situation wasn't like AI itself, because we have to recognize that it's problematic and deceptive, but the issue is that it was the lawyer's failure to ensure the accuracy of the AI-generated content.
Absolutely. The kind of failure to double check, cross-reference before you submit those arguments. Make sure the cases are real.
And we get told about this all the time. And I think for we're working on a factum right now.
Yeah.
And we have to look at relevant case law.
Yeah.
And our professors are telling us it takes a minute. It takes
It
a minute or
does.
two
Yeah.
to go to a legal librarian and to look for a citation. It is so simple to find out if you falsified something. So the fact that most of this case brief was incorrect is very concerning.
It is. Like, I don't want to talk trash about this poor lawyer. They were probably overworked, but it is interesting that, they didn't double check the cases. And not only that, it's important to consider another aspect of this case, that the failure of doing that double checking, that cross-referencing, had implications on their client right? The decision to rely on AI and accidentally submit those completely fake cases, it ended up being the reason that this file, which was called Mata v. Avianca, that file was then eventually kind of thrown out, right? Because not only did the attorneys mishandle their brief, but the entire argument was basically flawed from the outset because the arguments that they were creating relied on fake arguments from fake cases. So honestly, the situation, it really highlights the procedural issues and the ethical failings both of relying a little bit too much on AI that is not accurate enough for us right now.
I think it's also funny. So we touched on why they got into steep trouble with the mishandling of the brief, but it's also important to note that the case was actually dismissed because it was filed beyond the 2-year limitation period established by the Montreal Convention. So, like you said, the situation really highlights procedural and ethical failings, and the need for people to not rely on AI and to really lock in with their research.
Yeah, just kind of like the reason to be wary, especially if you're in the legal profession. It's important to be wary of it right now, which, again, it's funny because I feel like I get called out a lot on, like, my deep hate for ChatGPT and all.
I don't think I hate it. I think for me personally, it's good for starting that roadmap.
It is.
But I think you get into trouble.
A tool, yeah.
I think it's the trouble that you get in is when you stick with it.
Absolutely. Like, if it's the end product, like it was in this case, then it's a problem. But if you use it to kind of consolidate large text, like hopefully get, like kind of make your job a little bit easier in the starting phases, I think that's fine.
But, exactly. And the Canadian Bar Association has been really vocal about the need for transparency in AI tools, as well as the need for lawyers to fully understand how the tools they make used to make decisions. So AI shouldn't be a black box where we can't see how it arrived as to its conclusions, because in the legal context, how someone gets to a conclusion is the most important part.
Absolutely.
And when you fill that in with, deceptive AI,
empty arguments.
You really destroy yourself there.
Absolutely.
But even with transparency, it's clear that we're not ready to give AI much power.
At least at this stage, for sure. Yeah.
I'm hoping that doesn't change because I want to keep my job.
Yeah, I mean, especially as I worked a lot in publishing and like writing in undergrad. And I think that also is where like this like kind of issue with ChatGPT or AI stems from, is like as a writer, I'm like, nobody could write as well as a normal human could, obviously.
And it's terrifying because sometimes it does
really
well. Good work.
Yeah. But I'm like, no, the touch of a human can never be replicated, but low-key it can now. Anyways.
Let's not get too existential out here.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start having an identity crisis. Anyways, I think, oh, I just slammed my table. I'm feeling really passionate about this, guys. I think it's really important for us to talk also about, like, why are lawyers now relying more on AI, right? Like, in this example, why did the lawyer use the AI model that they did to rely on those fake cases? And it's important to bring up this point of, like, the field of law is one that is notoriously known for how overworking it is, how stressful it is. I think in literally our orientation week, they told us about how, like, lawyers have the highest rate of alcoholism or something because, like, people get depressed. Do you remember that?
Yep, and then they put us on a boat cruise with
the bar. Anyways.
So, yeah, the legal profession is demanding in terms of hours and the amount of stress that lawyers have to juggle. I mean, from client meetings, court deadlines, regulations, drafting contracts, all of these things that someone has to take. And
absolutely.
It's a lot. So let's not forget about the billable hour model, which creates, in my opinion, huge pressures to maximize productivity and efficiency. Many firms expect associates to build upwards to 1,800 to 2,000 hours a year, When you break that down, it means long nights, weekend work, and very little time for that work-life balance that we strive for so hard in law school.
Absolutely. And, I think this also speaks to smaller firms, not just those big Bay Street firms, because in the small firms where lawyers are now running a whole business, not just like working their legal responsibilities, they're now having to deal with all the aspects of running a business, right? And along with that, the legal profession means often working with clients. If you're working with individual clients, you are often getting calls. So I was seeing a LinkedIn post about how a lot of lawyers get calls in the middle of the night, or it was some joke about how lawyers will be like, okay, you don't need to call me like every 15 minutes, don't worry. And it's because these individual clients, whatever rough situation they might be in, then they reach out to you. So that becomes another kind of element of adding stress, because it's like your phone's constantly ringing.
It's an interesting profession because, sometimes if you don't tell people your boundaries, you can get them trampled on, and that is really dangerous. And I think it's very important for us to have boundaries. I know for me personally, I think you've seen me at the library from during exam season, oh my gosh, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like it was a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
The minute I step in the door at home, no more. That's
Absolutely.
it.
I get it.
And I'm terrified once I start working in a firm that when I get home, all I'm going to think about is my work. Because I'll be passionate about it. And
Yeah. No,
So,
I get it. That's like me dreaming about, it's
Bedford.
like, it's important. Yeah, me dreaming about Bedford. It's important to like set boundaries. Even during exam season, I know for me, like I had to start telling my friends, my sister, family that, okay, I have to cut this call short. Like I just need to either sleep or work right now.
And it's the worst. It's the holiday season and you have to tell like your mom, I love you, but I cannot talk to you for the next 2 days.
And so here's the thing, right? This is us as 1Ls right now. So it is the profession. It's an overworking profession. And again, we're talking about like after we graduate and becoming junior associates, those ones are not the only ones that are also feeling strain. It's not just like the young professionals out here. Even senior lawyers at a very high level in their career, they're often juggling leadership responsibilities, client expectations. There's even, one could argue that there's more responsibility because of the reputation that they've maybe built for their firm, or, the role that they're in.
For themselves,
Exactly.
Yep.
And they often report feeling overwhelmed as well. So that pressure to maintain a very strong reputation, meet those firm targets, it can really emphasize these feelings of isolation and stress. So basically what we're, really emphasizing here is that this field is one where struggling with mental health is quite common.
And mental health initiatives within law firms are improving, but, that stigma around seeking help still exists. Many lawyers worry that admitting mental health struggles could be perceived as a weakness, and one that could potentially affect their career progression. Because if you can't handle that stress, if you can't do that work, if you can't take on that case, if you can't do this, if you can't do those extracurriculars and speeches and all those things, you might not progress, and that is genuinely terrifying.
And, fortunately, organizations like the Canadian Bar Association and even provincial law societies, they're now stepping up a bit more, offering more mental health resources, confidential support programs. There's initiatives like mindfulness training, peer support networks, and even like in-house, like firm-wide wellness policies that are starting to gain some traction. So it's good that I guess people are realizing the importance of addressing mental health to ensure that our lawyers are, awake. They're not overworked. They're not tired.
Or depressed or struggling
or accidentally not looking at their cases that they're submitting.
I thought we weren't going to be hearkening on this guy too.
Okay.
But
He's just our example of the day. He's just our example.
There's still a long way to go. So addressing the culture of overwork in law requires a shift in mindset. And firms, it has been argued that firms need to prioritize well-being alongside productivity. So encouraging those boundaries that we talked about, flexible work arrangements, and promoting a healthier work-life balance could go a long way for reducing burnout. I think as a lot of us who are highly motivated, hardworking people, and this can go to any context, anyone doing anything, burnout is real. Burnout is terrible, and if you don't take care of yourself, you will burn out. Not everyone can be Superman 24/7, and it's important that we talk about that. So, understanding that it's about ultimately it's about finding sustainable solutions that
Right.
allow us to thrive both professionally and personally.
And that's where AI comes in. And this is coming from a girly who is very kind of, what's the word? I'm always skeptical of AI, but it is really where AI comes in, because these tools, they're revolutionizing the ways that lawyers and honestly everybody works. They're automating a lot of the tedious, time-consuming tasks that eat up a lot of hours in the day. So you could think about document review as an example of that. Things that used to take days can now be done within half the amount of time.
I agree with you, but for me, I feel like such a nerd. If I don't review the document, if I don't read it, if I don't know what it's really about, and I'm just reading the AI brief, I think all of us can attest to the fact that something that's synthesized on AI, it's not picking up what me or you would look at.
Absolutely.
With our backgrounds and what we're learning in law school.
Yeah.
So I agree. These tools are revolutionizing the way that we can do things, but I think it's a big give and take.
I think it's also that they'll continue to become a little bit more cutting edge. We're at the very starting point right now. So as it progresses, I think there may be more reason to feel a little bit more trusting. But right now, I do share that level of distrust with you, Nick.
I do. And, tools like natural language processing and machine learning algorithms can sift through that case law and summarize precedents. AI tools are making legal services more affordable. That's another big thing. It's making it affordable, arguably more efficient, and potentially increasing access to justice for individuals and businesses that previously couldn't afford extensive legal support. And that's a huge problem in the legal field.
Mm-hmm. And there are several AI-powered resources available specifically for lawyers and anyone in the legal field. We even use a couple of these in law school too, or at least we've come across them.
Oh, definitely. Our professors really try to steer us clear from using AI, but I hate to say it can be a little beneficial. So I know I've been using Westlaw.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Like the AI kind of model that they have in there?
Yes, it's pretty helpful.
Right.
For searching for cases and finding things. So again, we're using it like a tool, right?
Yeah. I know there's also, I've come across Lexis Plus. I haven't used it, but I know that it is also available. So I guess, there's all of these other tools. There's, like you said,
there's VLEX, Case Text, and Ross Intelligence, but
right. So
they're really for me, it's the unknown as of right now. I don't have any experience with them.
Yeah, no. But what do you think it kind of means for the future of law?
I think AI has the potential, like we've been talking about, to be this huge game changer in terms of efficiency, especially when it comes to things like automating repetitive tasks or legal research or, like I think you brought up, document review. Mm-hmm. It can be a huge asset in helping lawyers work more efficiently and focus on the human aspects of law, like strategy, client relationships, and judgment calls.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess what we're really honing in on as we kind of reach closer to the end of this first half of our discussion is that right now, especially in the legal profession, it seems like AI can be seen more as a tool, but not a replacement, right? As long as we keep in mind the possible hindrances of AI and understand the need of regulating its use, it can 100% still enhance our field without compromising the values. And it's really important to kind of understand the importance of that sweet spot and that it can be useful to find that sweet spot. We don't have to shut the door on it completely. And that's something I'm telling myself too, because honestly, I need to open up to it a little bit more.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here, from risks of bias in AI to the importance of human interpretation in the law. It's clear that AI can assist, but it's not ready to replace human judgment.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding the limitations of AI and using it in ways that complement the work of legal professionals. The law, eventually, it will always need the human touch, right? Okay. Anyways, we've yapped a lot about legal research, AI. We're going to give you guys a bit of a break. And then after the break, we're going to touch on intellectual property and AI.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah. You're listening to 99.1 FM on CJAM. This is Magna Carta, and we'll see you after the break.
Welcome back to this week's PBSC Magna Carta. I'm Nick,
My name is Vurjeet.
and we're really excited to get back into discussion with you.
Yeah. In the last half of this episode, we were talking about AI and the legal profession. Specifically, we were covering kind of how it affects legal research. And now we're going to switch on to the other kind of main side of talking about AI with law, and that is how it affects or kind of brings up new cases, right? Especially when it comes to intellectual property.
Right? The boom in AI is now opening doors for a new aspect of business for lawyers who practice intellectual property law, which includes trademark, copyright, and patent law. Before we delve into the ways AI is affecting this field, let's do a quick little recap of the largest realms in intellectual property law. First, copyright law, which protects creative works and ensures the following rights. So the rights to reproduction and distribution. So reproduction is the right to copy the work, and distribution is the right to sell or share copies.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that comes to mind with copyright is music.
Absolutely.
Reproduction and distribution. Who's that artist that's always is starting to like reproduce like all of their stuff and put it back out there?
Oh, Taylor Swift?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mastermind.
Yeah, absolutely. Even like I'm a huge Frank Ocean fan, and one thing that is known within like the Frank Ocean fan base is how he released Blonde, which is one of his most popular albums, kind of secretly because the record label that he was with or that had rights to his music, he kind of released a very simple album, which was Endless. So I think honestly the music field is very much shaped by who has rights to what. That's a really good point.
Absolutely.
So that's copyright law. That's the one that you're going to think of when you're thinking of anything creative, kind of directly creative. Arts, like you mentioned, music, Nick. The second aspect that we're going to touch on is patent law. So when you think of tech, when you think of innovative, new inventions, you've probably heard of the terms patent pending or patented technology. Those are the ones that are talking about specifically a new, very new, original, and useful form of technology. So off the top of my head, I can think of scrub daddies, and I'm pretty sure they have like a patent for that special type of design that they have for their scrubs, which apparently just really get into like the crevices of dishes and whatnot.
Wow, this turned into a plug for Scrub Daddy, guys.
Guys, scrub daddies are really great for everything. They clean the bathroom. They're great for the kitchen sink.
But you know what I've noticed? There are a lot of like knockoff Scrub Daddies out there.
There are. But I guess their technology must be slightly different because they can't copy the exact same one.
Exactly. I see. I don't think this has to do with technology, and I think it might go back into like copyright.
Mm-hmm.
But there are these stuffed animals called squishmallows, right?
Oh my God, I
And they're-
love them. I
They're
have an
all-
avocado.
Have you been to like Costco? Have you seen the massive ones?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
Costco has like the actual ones,
Mm-hmm.
but if we go to like Dollarama
Yeah.
or no, I think it was like Winners.
Yeah.
They have the knockoff ones, and you can't even tell. They look exactly the same. It's just a different name.
Absolutely. That goes into branding too, which then, brings in trademark law. Actually, that's a great kind of segue into trademark law. So trademark law is another kind of big umbrella term in intellectual property that handles the branding, the identity, and, things like logos, colors, sounds associated with businesses.
What about like catchphrases?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're thinking eat fresh for Subway, that's trademarked, right? Or when we're thinking about certain images that are associated with a business, for example, sports mascots like the Raptors for the Toronto Raptors.
Yep.
That is also a trademarked kind of character and image, right?
So these are the big three, but it's worth mentioning that it's not an exhaustive list of what is covered under the field of intellectual property law. What we have now, though, is a great foundation for discussing the plethora of ways that AI can disrupt legal practices in this field.
Absolutely. Yeah, intellectual property is very broad. And Nick, I don't know if you've touched on it in your classes. I honestly haven't yet, even though I've been like super interested. So I'm really glad that we're here talking about this today. Like I have been dying to like learn more about this.
I know we've been
topic.
trying to put it in the schedule for a while now.
Yeah.
I also haven't covered anything on this yet. Just yet.
So right now we're kind of going quite surface level at this with our 1L knowledge, but it sets a good kind of foundation, like you were saying, Nick. So already, I'm sure that listeners, you can also think of the amount of legal issues that could come up in these 3 topics that we've mentioned. Copyrights, trademarks, inventions with patents, right? There are a lot of issues that could come up naturally. And when we kind of throw AI in the mix there is even more issues that could come up. So when we're talking specifically about copyright, think about the arts. Think about, okay, there's a lot of AI models that will generate images, right? Like I could write something like, draw me in the style of a Walt Disney movie and make me really cute and make my hair really long and luscious. And then it'll produce an image in the art style of that. Which again, then a question could come up as to like, am I the producer? Like, or do I own the rights to that image because I've given a prompt?
Yep.
Or is it the generator? Which we'll get into later with some practice cases.
What are some of those tools?
So some that, I mean, I kind of, when I looked into this, because I don't use them, I'm not sure if you do, Nick.
No, I don't. I do have a friend, though, that has like a profile picture made from AI, and there was that whole surge of AI art maybe like a year ago, and like everyone was posting about it.
Yeah.
Not me, though. I wasn't going to spend like $10 to get my photos AI'd.
Does it cost money? I think these, you can pay like per image or something. Maybe.
I think some of them cost money.
Yeah, I have one of my best friends, she's in animation at OCAD. Shout out Anisha. She probably could speak higher on that, but I do think it's kind of entering the fields. Anyways, so some tools when I looked up in terms of image generators, there's one called DALL-E, DALL-E.
That's cute.
Yeah, it's like Wall-E.
It's like Dali, the artist.
Oh, no? Salvador Dali. That's adorable. Oh my god, I actually have the melting clock in my room. Anyways, it's a fake one. Obviously, I don't have an original one. Anyways, Mid-Journey is another popular one, and Stable Diffusion. So any artsy people out there, maybe you know of these platforms, but these are kind of the big ones.
Along with digital art, this is also a big field in terms of music, like we talked about. So, for example, songs that have lyrics that were originally produced under another artist, being fed into an AI model to have a new version sung by another artist.
Right? So, and a lot of these types of songs become super popular, like I think on social media. And I don't know if your algorithm also has like South Asian songs, but I think it was like a year ago, I started seeing videos that would be like a popular old Bollywood song sung technically in Ariana Grande's voice.
Yeah. I've seen like a ton of those with like making artists like feature on songs, and it's like you're making your own kind of music, and that's kind of terrifying because it sounds really real.
It does sound
and
real.
I guess it is real, but it's like
or like there will be all of these like fake Drake raps too.
Oh my god, and then you have them like uploaded on SoundCloud and stuff like that. But it's technically Drake's voice, but I don't know if Drake's making money off of that, and I think that's something we'll dive into, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess, you know, while we're on the topic, we can just touch on the copyright issues related to this specifically come from owning your voice now. How do you copyright your exact voice? And honestly, I'm sure a lot of the artists are concerned about the rise in AI and their voices being used without their consent. And where's the income that's possibly being generated by these songs going if they didn't actually sing it and somebody just like put a prompt into a little model, right?
Yeah, that's making me not trust AI just a little bit more.
Yeah. So in the realm of art, we see a lot of potential copyright issues, right? But it's not only limited to art. Writing is also an issue here. Let's set out a fun little hypothetical.
Oh, we love hypotheticals.
Remember the car from like last year? I remember we were talking about cars a lot.
You owe me a coffee or something.
Yeah,
That's all
that
I
was a
remember.
really, and then there was like crossing the bridge. It was a very complicated, very complicated hypothetical. Okay, let's say I feed ChatGPT or some type of AI model an extremely thorough niche prompt, and I've been thinking about this prompt for years, and I've put a lot of effort into this idea, and it's the most original idea, and it's about this superhero named Vurjeet, and Vurjeet's gonna save the world, and the prompt is just very specific, and I put a lot of my creative thought into this prompt, right? And I put it into the little AI model, and the AI model writes up a whole novel for me. So then we deal with legal issues about like,
Who owns it?
exactly.
Yeah.
If we're redistributing it, can I say that that's my book? Technically, the idea is mine, right?
And who from ChatGPT is the actual like author?
Yeah.
Or are you an author? Are you co-authors? There's like so many little things to think about.
Exactly, because even though I've come up with this idea, like we mentioned earlier, Nick, in the first half, these AI models, they scrape and they scour and they take from thousands of past forms of data, right? So technically, it's not an original piece of work if it's being created with the use of all of that past data. So can we really argue then that the creation is fully original, right?
Absolutely not. Because again, like you said, you worked in publishing,
Mm-hmm.
you did a lot of writing, and that human touch.
Exactly.
It's not your human touch. It's
Exactly.
picking up on like algorithmic data to write you a book. It's your idea, but they've taken it and they've made their own creation with it, and you didn't like copyright your ideas or trademark them at all.
Exactly. I honestly, if we were to ask like personal opinions, I would also agree with that. Maybe that's coming from like the fact that I'm also with a writing background, but I think if you haven't written those words yourself, then you cannot call that book yours, right? But then this also brings up a brand new legal issue that currently within, I think, most jurisdictions around the world, like Europe, wherever, an AI model cannot be considered a co-author, right, for any copyright-related issues. But maybe, I honestly can see a future where, like, if these models become advanced enough, that maybe they could be kind of decided as enough to be its own author, like legally, like that platform owns a certain amount of authorship, you know?
I agree with you. I think it's terrifying. I will not be putting my book thoughts into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
No one needs to know about my superhero story.
Right, okay. You keep your superhero stories to yourself, I guess.
Let's move on to trademark law now. In terms of a business's identity, there are a number of AI tools that have come out to expedite the process of creating a polished, creative brand for a business. But the issue is that there is no way to ensure that it is 100% original. Issues can arise where a brand looks awfully similar to an already existing one. And I think we kind of touched on this with like our Scrub Daddy and Squishmallow.
Absolutely. I guess because with Scrub Daddy and Squishmallow, those are like that's patents or like, because that's like an invention and copyright then is art. But this is talking specifically about the branding. So sometimes when it comes to, let's say I come up with a company, I put a lot of thought into this logo, the branding, and we all know how important branding is when it comes to businesses nowadays. And let's say you, Nick, decide to come up, build your own business.
With an equally polished creative brand.
Absolutely. Maybe it's a completely different product, and you use an AI model to help with building the branding, the colors and whatnot. What if, there are situations because the AI model is taking from all of those past logos, it's very possible, and I think there has been instances where a logo looks awfully similar, like you're saying. So in that situation, then they're dealing with trademark issues without actually realizing it because that logo is not original. It was taken with inspiration of like thousands of other ones.
Which could cause massive disruptions for mine and Vurjeet's brands.
Businesses, right? Yeah, and
because who is liable for that then?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's for the judge.
That's why these issues are just so interesting because it's like you know, how innocent is a user who's using these AI models? Like, technically, they're just, like, feeding their little thing. They're trying to build their business like you, Nick, with your hypothetical business. You're just trying to build your brand out here, survive in this economy.
I haven't looked through, like, Dolly, but, you know, it would be interesting to see if they have a little, like, placard at the bottom that tells you who owns it and if there's copyright things and terms of use and everything like that. Because I know websites have those in really little tricky spots.
Yeah.
And again, I think this circles back to the point that we made before the break. This is a tool.
Yeah.
This is something to use as a tool. It's not something to rely on. And you have to have discretion when putting anything into this because you don't know where it goes.
Absolutely. And not to go too much on a side tangent here, but on that note, Nick, like, I don't know if you've noticed the new feature on Google. When you Google something, there will be an AI kind of consolidation of a bunch of the information for your search.
Yeah.
And something that I find interesting that wasn't coming up when AI first started getting more popular was the kind of like mini citations with the consolidated information. So, you know, I can see a way like more polished version of this later where like there are very accurate citations, which then our concern of where is this information coming from kind of eradicates, right? Anyway, so that's on the note of AI as a whole. But going back into patent law, this one's specifically interesting because, like we were saying, it includes inventions. So to me, it kind of feels like this holy grail of originality, something super novel that nobody has created before. Legal issues that we see that could come up with patent law is the question of, can AI be an inventor of a patent or a co-inventor? And right now we know that it can't, right? But this is a question to ask about like potential future cases, like when AI progresses. Also, another question is, how can we measure novelty and originality if an AI model is the thing that created the idea, right? Like, is it truly an original invention? So while the Patent Act right now in Canada doesn't specifically define an inventor, Canadian case law right now assumes that an inventor must be a natural person. So it's not an issue right now, but who knows? It could be a problem for later.
Probably will. So where is Canada right now in terms of handling all these sticky legal issues? We're seeing that the U.S. has issued clear advice on this matter, but it's still intriguing to see whether Canadian courts will decide to deviate from the norms the U.S. is setting.
Yeah, so the U.S. did set some kind of clear advice specifically on copyright law. A recent case in February 2023 showed us that generating art using an AI model did not mean that the user who maybe prompted that model is the rightful author of the image. So in that case, an author created a comic book. So she wrote her own text in the comic book, she arranged the photos, but the actual images were all being produced by Midjourney, which is one of those models.
Wow. Beyond case law, there's a growing focus within federal governments around the world to pass acts related to regulating artificial intelligence. For example, the EU regulation laying down harmonized rules on artificial intelligence, or the AI Act.
So there are kind of more official policies coming out to regulate this. And while Canada hasn't passed anything the way we've seen in the UK, like you mentioned, Nick, the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, or the AIDA, I'm just going to shorten it there, was proposed in June 2022 and is expected to come into force actually this year. So the act itself is extremely broad. If you look it up, like, it's covering a lot of bases when it comes to AI. In terms of specifically for intellectual property, which we're talking about today, it's expected to be the clearest maybe in terms of talking about very clear forms of harm when it comes to infringements, of maybe privacy. But it's actually still unclear whether the act will clarify issues surrounding just rightful authorship for the sake of understanding who the true author is.
And I think that lack of clarity leads to the need for more regulation. And I think the unknown perpetuates that fear of legal regulations. Like, what is going to happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. And
that's because the number of lawsuits AI models have had are also increasing.
Right. About 2 months ago, a group of Canadian media outlets collectively filed a case against OpenAI. the creator of ChatGPT. So a lot of these news outlets, they included CBC, Postmedia, Metroland, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, Canadian Press. These are like big names.
And they're all claiming copyright infringements and are looking for punitive damages from OpenAI, along with payment for any profits that the company has made using news articles from the organizations.
So with more lawsuits being filed, the presence of federal legislation will prove to be even more significant. You know, it's not only showing that there's clearly like a gap in our law that could use, like, we need some at least basic form of regulation, but it also shows how much lawyers, up until those laws come out, will need to navigate these issues of privacy and intellectual property infringements on their own without any kind of foundational law. And that might be a situation where we're going to have to keep looking at the UK, Europe as a whole, and the US to see what decisions are they coming out with.
I agree with you. I mean, we think about writing papers and all sorts of academic literature that we've both encountered at U of T. You need to cite, like, CBC, Postmedia, Metro, Toronto Star. There are even, like, I don't know if it's like The Atlantic. Now you have to pay to get in. You only have a number of free articles. So if AI is sort of finding ways to break down those privacy barriers and is utilizing that information and not citing them, that's dangerous.
Absolutely.
And they are rightfully so suing them for the punitive damages, because they are using their information without permission.
Honestly, like, I also agree, because it's like the amount of work that goes into meeting journalistic standards and also researching heavily and putting out this information. For this information to just then be used and replicated constantly anywhere around the world for whatever purposes without even being able to measure or follow when or where it's being used, that is dangerous, honestly. It is.
It is, and it's a bit reckless. And I think that's a case we have to keep our eyes on.
Absolutely. I think in general, if we're talking about AI kind of in general here, it's just really intriguing to me because of how much it is very rapidly changing our everyday landscape, right? Like, I'm already seeing how it's changing norms. My sister, just yesterday, she was telling me that she bought, like, the paid version of ChatGPT. She uses it, like, honestly, in very clever means with, like, very strategic prompts. And I feel like that comes with practice as well. So what I'm kind of noticing is that whether it be for your personal life, whether it be for work, I'm seeing AI and its use bleed into, like, every aspect of our lives.
And I think it's something that we're going to continuously talk about. I think it's going to take up more space, and we have to be ready for it. So, yeah, in the legal context, again, this is a tool.
Absolutely.
And use some discretion. I know that I use ChatGPT sometimes if I need help prompting myself into an email, because sometimes I don't know what to say, and it's been a really successful tool for me. I don't know if you've used it for anything yet.
Yeah, I have. Obviously, yeah, like, I have used it. I'm just always like I'm like dealing with internal battles. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm
this
using
shouldn't be
this.
allowed. I think there's a level of apprehension that I still have for technology, and that's just because I wasn't really brought up techie. It was like, I want to watch this. I want to go on the computer. Go outside.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that ChatGPT has opened the doors for a lot of really interesting creative opportunities. But again, like we're seeing with the CBC suing, or the media outlet suing ChatGPT, it can be dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah, and especially if you're a business owner, freelance creative, or just somebody who's kind of curious to learn more about how to navigate AI safely in a way that, you aren't possibly infringing somebody else's rights. I noticed that the government of Canada has a lot of very detailed, thorough information on legal limits on its website. So if you're one of those folks, definitely go check that out. You can do a quick Google search for AI safety, Government of Canada, it'll pop up.
I think more people have to do that. I know frequently when we get terms and conditions and documents to read to accept, we don't usually go over them, but it's really important that we, scan them at least, or at least skim, to make sure we know what we're agreeing to, because you don't want to be someone balancing, like you said, freelance, if you're inventing, if you're creating, you do not want to get locked into a suit.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess again, we're kind of speaking generally as we're reaching the end of this episode, but like my sister, she constantly talks to me about how I would be a very conservative grandma because of how sketched out I am by ChatGPT, the same way somebody could possibly be sketched out by Google. She always uses Google as an example. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be that type of person. I need to be open. I need to be open to my mom, she's constantly like, you don't know, maybe your kids will fall in love with ChatGPT. Maybe they'll fall in love with robots. And I'm like, there's a line still.
I chastise my parents for not being able to do certain things with certain technologies or being apprehensive. My mom loves music.
Right.
But she refuses to get Spotify.
What?
Or Apple Music or anything.
Is she like a record player girly?
No, I think she's on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, you're really brave going through those ads. But, like you said, do we adapt to this change? And I feel like the answer is, unfortunately, yes, we have to.
Either way, we have to.
We have to. We don't have to like it, but we have to learn how to use it. So
exactly.
AI is such an extremely interesting topic, just because of how much it's changing our everyday landscape.
Right.
It's really changing the norms of how we conduct our lives, like you said, and whether it be at work or outside of work.
And, I think a great key takeaway from this is one that Nick was honing in on earlier, which is because we cannot kind of run away from this progression. And maybe, listeners, you are not like us and you're embracing it. You're hugging ChatGPT every day. You love AI.
You tell it thank you and please.
Yeah, you tell it thank you, please, I love you. Whatever it is, the whole point is that nobody can avoid it. So it's important to understand its limits, especially currently, and more so understand its potential as a tool. And that's what we're going to leave you with. The idea that, it is a tool. Okay, folks, that is it for today's episode of Pro Bono Students Canada, Magna Carta. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us just yap on and on about AI and intellectual property and legal research. My name is Vurjeet.
And I'm Nick, and this is us tuning out.
Thank you.